one of the things you probably have to do a lot of convincing people of is that they actually can do. They can hit the target. They can jump into the field. We limit ourselves by just believing that we can't do or learn. So yeah, I'd say learn. Don't get caught up in academia. So I think if you adopt that curiosity, that learn how to learn, and if you just commit to viewing yourself as capable, then you can own your own education. You can be a super human.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Own Your Education podcast. I am here with a guest that I have admired for multiple years from a distance. I was first introduced to Mike Yates on LinkedIn through a lot of his content that he'd been creating. But what inspired me about Mike was his proactive approach to gaining an education, but also changing the educational system. So, Mike, I appreciate you being here and taking time. And I've been excited to talk with you for quite some time.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited, super happy to be here.
So before we kind of dive into any topics about education or anything like that, I'd love just to kind of intro a little bit about what you've been doing, but a little bit about Mike, and we can hear about this from you as well, as you were the founder and the host of the Schoolish podcast, which is now your consulting business. Yeah. And you said that you're mainly consulting tech companies. Is that what you're doing right now, or?
Education tech company. So ed tech, or, also schools, but squarely in education.
Okay. Super cool. Along with that, you're also a big part of the Reinvention Lab, which you told me about a little bit, but maybe fill in the audience, just what is the Reinvention Lab? What is your guys' kind of mission behind what you're doing?
Yeah. So one, we need to work on our branding, because it's hard for everybody to figure out what we do. But a part of this team called the Reinvention Lab, we're inside of Teach for America. We're this R&D arm, so research and design, turn research into new product design that we can build to help Teach for America learn where learning is going and be, honestly, I love the word that you use, proactive about pursuing that. So it may be we see there's a trend with AI, and then we build AI solutions, or we build ways to get AI solutions to teachers. So that's kind of what I spend my days doing.
R&D by day, consulting by night. That's a gig.
Yeah.
Well, along with that, so before you even got into what you're doing now with the Reinvention Lab in Schoolish, you were traditionally a teacher, right? And just a normal educational system. Is that correct? Or
I think I might have froze.
I can re-ask that if you want me to.
You were asking about me being a teacher.
Yeah. So before you started with the Reinvention Lab and what you've been doing with Schoolish, you were a teacher for multiple years within the educational system that we have now. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about that experience. What drove you to be a teacher? And then maybe even a little bit about how you started to kind of transition out of that.
I never wanted to be a teacher. My mom has been a teacher for 36 years. And she told me when I was very young, one day she's like, "Hey, Mike, never be a teacher. It doesn't pay well enough. It's not a fun job. Don't do it." So when I left college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just fell into building education programs at the United Way. I knew things about the world, and I wanted students to know them. Mainly my goal in building these programs was to build a pipeline of opportunities that were not college, because I felt like I had wasted 4 years. I'm in college, and I came out with 2 degrees, and people were like, "That's really impressive." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I was just in the right place at the right time. I don't know what I learned." My oldest child, when he was born, he was in the NICU for 6 months. And so I quit my job at the United Way. My wife and I moved into the hospital. When it was kind of time for me to start working again, as we could see the horizon of like getting out, a friend of mine came by. She worked at the school. She was like, hey, they really need a speech coach. I have a speech and debate background. I did it in high school and college. They need somebody to revive their speech program. And I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to work at a school, but I do need something now. So I reached out to them, and then I ended up teaching speech, coaching basketball, coaching track, teaching, coaching, like doing, I was the assistant athletic director. I ended up falling in love with this process of pushing students to be better. I loved coaching. If I didn't have to be a teacher, I'd still be coaching basketball right now. It was my favorite part of my day because I got to see these guys who didn't think very highly of themselves win 10 games in a row or whatever. Right. And so that was really cool for me. That was a small private school. And from there, I went to go get certified. I taught in public school. Then I bounced around private, public, charter, and I realized that they're all the same thing. And for me in year 5, I was done. People ask me all the time, do you miss the classroom? And my answer is no, I don't, because I gave the classroom everything I had, like everything I had. And I'm not going to even lie about this. Like, my first year of teaching was awesome. I was good at it right out of the gate. There's a lot of people that have horror stories. For me, I remember I came home and I told my wife one day, I was like, I think I was clearly born to do this. Like, I just feel like I get kids and they understand me. I knew that I had this profound sense as a young teacher that like I needed to digitally be where they were. So I spent a lot of time on Vine back in the day.
Yeah.
So like I knew all the references. I knew all the jokes. And because of that, like I had this incredible rapport with my students. Today's version of Vine is TikTok, right? I'm on TikTok. I create on TikTok. I consume TikTok. So when I get around high school students or I get around college students and they say a thing or they ask me about a thing, I'm like, no, I do know what you're talking about. I know exactly. I've been following the Keith Lee Atlanta restaurant saga as well. Like, so, but I was a teacher that never lectured. I tried not to give grades. I did things very differently. Sometimes I got in trouble for it. Sometimes I won awards for it, regardless of depending on what school I was in. And then I literally fell into a project with this place called, at the time it was called Emergent Academy, but it was essentially a private school that a software billionaire bought. And they brought on a team to build a new model of school where you replace direct instruction with software. Like adaptive learning software, so Khan Academy, all that. So I did that for 4 years. That was the greatest experience of my life. It was hard. It was real startup life. It was 90-hour weeks. It was building a school from scratch that would eventually scale to other cities. Another very well-known and popular aerospace company. Like we built a school inside of their office. So that was a ride. But I think at the end of the day, for me, it was just all this exploration of like, how do I give kids like me an experience that I didn't have so that they know that they can like quite literally take life by the reins and direct it where they want to go.
Well, that is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. Like that whole experience of like being able to get into teaching and feeling the passion for it, but also seeing like some of the problems that come along with it. Like the undervalue of teachers within society and whatnot. But I like what you talked about where I think teaching is coaching. I think the best teachers are coaches. And I love what you said. Like if it was a better opportunity, I would still be coaching high school basketball.
Yeah.
How cool is that? But I think the society right now that we live in just doesn't see the value of having powerful teachers, especially with our youth. So I don't know, how have you kind of navigated that of like wanting to be in teaching and coaching, but also not seeing it as the most, I don't know, fruitful place to be?
Yeah. Like I think if most people are on it and you know what, I'll say this, most people who will push back against what I'm about to say are probably not teachers themselves. The job sucks. Like it's hard. It is. like there are enough bright spots and enough days to make you keep coming back. There are generally, with millennials and whatever the generations before us, Gen X and certainly boomers, like there's enough societal pressure to do good, to do public good, that keeps us coming back to that profession. But if you just look at the numbers, I say this to people all the time. Gen Z is not coming to bail out the American education system. They are not doing it. They are very clear. They're like, look, if I want to teach somebody, I'll build my own startup, or I'll go on TikTok and I'll teach on live for 3 hours a day. Or even I saw this girl, she teaches people piano for 8 hours a day on TikTok live as if it is her full-time job. And she's making $3,000 a stream. So I'm like, how do I go to this girl and say, hey, how about you trade that in where you can reach anyone in the world for a school building that has a slender window, and is in this heavy brick building that resembles a prison more than a school. And look, of course she's not going to do that. So I think, to me, what it comes down to, is how I can optimize my life to improve the conditions of the profession without having to be inside of the burning house. I have, education has just become my life's work. I never set out for that to be the case, but it's what I've spent my entire adult life doing. I have just been tinkering around with school really since I was in high school. Just trying to figure out how to break it and mold it and shape it, because I do have I have incredible passion for incredible compassion and passion for the individuals that choose to be on the front lines, that choose every day to get up and go serve somebody else's children in the best way possible. The person I think of often is there's a teacher on TikTok. We've never met in person, but we've been on live together. His name is Manly Moore. And he works in a school, I believe in North Carolina. And, you get this very real 360 view of what it's like to be a teacher from him. You see the, like, I'm dog tired and I don't want to talk to you about being a teacher. You also see, like, I'm going to make really funny jokes about how little we're paid. But then you also see a really passionate educator who cares deeply about giving students an opportunity. Like, you see that all in one. And whenever I see him, I've never told him this. Now I'm going to have to DM him and tell him, like, I get incredible energy to go do the work that I do, because I'm like, man, if I can smooth the pathway for that dude and people that are behind him, like the next version of Manly Moore, then I think that we can do some considerable good. But I think that one of the other ways that I cope is, like, I have 4 children of my own, and they're never going to a public school. Like, my kids are downstairs right now. One of them is baking banana nut muffins. The other one is working on reading. Like, they're all doing something different, right? Somebody's doing math, right? So, like, we run our own homeschool program. And it's basically like it's basically just one-on-one tutoring. Like, if we strip it down, we do some funky things and some fun stuff, that, like, most people don't do. But if we strip it down, it's like school is trying to figure out how you scale the one-on-one tutor. And it does it at terrible, like, differing degrees, but like, it's awful. And so it's like, you know, we wanted to get every kid a tutor and mentor. So we crammed 25 of them into a classroom and said, this person in the front of the room, the teacher, is a really admirable person that you should look up to. So in our house, because there's only 4 of them, we're like, we can get to all of you one-on-one, right? So that's just how we do it. But every time we do something at school, here at, like, our school, I always think to myself, oh, how can I, like, turn this into a project? How can I turn this into a piece of content that I can put out into the world, challenge the way people think, you know, stuff like that.
Dude, how cool was that? I love what you said, where school is trying to scale the one-on-one mentorship. Yep. I think that one-on-one type of apprenticeship, mentorship, whatever you want to call it, is one of the most valuable ways to learn.
Yep.
And I want to get to that topic of mentorship in just a second. But in terms of, like, teachers, you know, the classroom's kind of changing. I love what you said about TikTok, where it's like TikTok is a window to the world, where school is a window that is like dark and kind of muggy right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what are the best teachers doing with their students? Maybe it's in the classroom, maybe it's outside the classroom, but what are some of the things that you're seeing the best teachers do these days?
I think they're breaking the rules, honestly. Teaching is one of those interesting professions where like you have to break the rules to do right by kids, I think. But if I give a more like politically correct answer, I really do think when I say breaking the rules, I really mean that. Like every school has these standards that they have, like every teacher has to hit. But the way that you choose to get there is not up to the state. So I think there's a lot of ways that teachers do this, whether it be, I remember I taught a teacher and she was incredible because she would make just these little things that she would do. Like she'd make name placards and decorate them differently, like by hand for each of her students. And I was like, at first I was like, why are you doing that? Like, that's a lot. But then when these high school juniors are like, oh, did you see the name placard she made me? Like, it was like, oh, okay. So I think it's little things like that. I once taught with this incredible teacher who, has a degree from clown school. Like she went to clown school.
No
she has
way.
a PhD in English and she went to clown school. Her name is Dr. Annie Bullock. Annie Bullock, you were amazing. And she used to do this thing called the Circle of Feeling, where she had all these like giant football players and she'd sit on the floor with them in a circle and she'd go, I have a feeling. I'm feeling tired or I'm feeling excited. And it was another thing where I was like, Annie, but then when one of my basketball players, 6'6", came to me and was like, hey, coach, have you ever heard of the Circle of Feeling? I'm like, yes, I have. He was like, I just want you to know I love it. And it gets my brain right before the game. And I was like, oh, wow. So I think like the best teachers are really, if you boil it down to one thing, they're meeting students where they are in the like really creative and unique ways. Like, oh man, Coach Curtis 88. Follow him on TikTok. This man is he's a U.S. history teacher. I believe he's in Ohio, and he's a football coach. But he makes like he's in costume, and on TikTok he does reenactments of historical events. And he does the ones that he knows are like on the AP test. And so I'm like, I have never asked him this, but I bet you his students are like nailing those AP tests. Cause like you can never forget these. Like, how are you going to forget about Martin Van Buren when your teacher's dressed up like him on TikTok and showing it to you in class? Like, like he should win so many more awards than he is winning. If he's not winning awards, his district somebody should be thrown in jail because that's a crime. So I just think it's like they're choosing to meet students where they are. And then if I would give you another thing that they're doing, it's honestly, it's pushing past all the crap. Cause there's a lot, man, there's so much red tape. Teacher tired it is different than any other type of exhaustion I've ever felt. You would think that because you were in a building all day, that your body doesn't feel exhausted, but there is no odd, dull pain. Like, if you kick your feet up at the end of the day, but as a teacher, you still feel like you're standing up because you've been standing for 8 hours straight. And in a lot of schools, you're not allowed, you'll get in trouble if you sit down. Like, so wow. Yeah, like a lot of teachers they'll get dinged on their performance evals if they're sitting down and the principal walks by. So you have legitimate teachers, 70 years old, 25 years old, 40 years old. They've got back issues. They've got shoulder issues because they're standing up all day, giving it all. So I think like the second thing is that they're pushing back. Great teachers push past that in a way that is, quite frankly, it's superhuman. Like it's amazing to me. And even though I hate the traditional system, I have lots of love and affinity and big applause for those in the traditional system who are like holding it down for real.
Holy cow. Man, it's really cool to hear your perspective because I look back at my teachers. I had this one teacher maybe I should send this to her. Miss Mead.
Yeah,
Miss Mead, she was my BC calculus teacher in my senior year. And we still, like, my friends and I, like, when we get together from high school, we still talk about Miss Mead because she ran this math class like a team. Like, I'm a big runner, so I'm big into sports. I view track as a team sport, whatever. But she would treat our math class like it was a sporting event and we were a team. So she would get up into the front of the class, and I'd always make fun of these mats she's standing on because she has like these big cushy mats. I now understand why. It's because I'm sitting down, she's standing up the whole day. Like,
that's smart. I never thought to do that.
But she would, the way she did things was a little unorthodox. And I think that's why we loved her.
Yep.
But she always talked about using the people next to you. Like, if you don't understand someone, you better talk to someone who does so that they can understand. And so it wasn't just us against it wasn't just a solo person against the math test. It was a team effort. Yeah. And so a little unorthodox thing that she did was she would create t-shirts every year for everybody in her BC Calc class.
Oh, that's so cool.
And any day that we have a test, you're stressing, you're thinking about it, everybody's in their calculus shirt. And my senior year, maybe we'll have to put this in the podcast, she does it off of like trends and stuff, kind of like what you said on time. But there was the straight out of Compton t-shirts. Yeah. So we did straight out of calculus, and we put all of the the mathematicians' faces on. Oh,
that's great.
On a calculus t-shirt. And so on test day, everybody in that class is rocking their t-shirt. We are fist bumping each other in the hall, trying to motivate each other with what we're doing, what we're about to go through. And it was an amazing experience just to feel the bond, but also seeing a teacher kind of take a very unorthodox approach.
Yeah, you should please include it on the podcast or make a separate video, right? Because like the thing is Mrs. Mead needs recognition for that. Even though she will never say so, she does. And unfortunately, like teacher of the year, they don't look at that when they think about teacher of the year. So my mom has won, she's won teacher of the year in her district multiple times. And every time she's shocked because she's like, oh, I didn't even know they were like watching me. Because my mother also, she teaches math as well. And she also does wild stuff. Like when I was in middle school, she was teaching the volume formula and like, it's not always even connected to what the thing is. She wheels this giant fish tank in there and runs a water hose through the window and turns on the water. And she's like, the room's going to flood unless you guys figure this out. So we're like, this is day one of learning volume. So we don't know. Like, so we're like, she's like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. Like, you can't use it. Figure it out. So we're like, okay, well, if we measure this side and that angle, then we can figure out. And I to this day, we've talked about it, and I know that I knew in the moment, like, she's not going to let this room flood. Like, but the show of it was really important. And when she won teacher of the year, it was so fascinating because I thought of that. I was like, man, nobody knows about this story. Like, no one. She won teacher of the year because her test scores were high and the students were very satisfied with her class. Right. But no one knows all this crazy. So like Miss Mead needs that story to be online. The world needs to know that she did that. Some other math teacher needs to know that she did that. So they can go, you know what? I'm making those t-shirts too. I love that. So please publish that story.
Oh, I will. I got to send that to her. I go try. Yeah. She is a big role model to me in how she does things. But that is interesting what you said. Like, teachers are only graded on class satisfaction and test scores, which is good. But I mean, also, like, what is a test score at the end of the day? Miss Mead, we had a 98% pass rate. I'm like, this woman knows what she's doing. Yeah. And I remember kind of thinking about that, going, man, I would love to be a teacher. And then I realized how much teachers are getting paid. And I look at Miss Mead's performance and I'm thinking, if they ran it like a sales team, I'm in sales, where you get graded on your performance. what if teachers or schools were judged or compensated the same way? If you could compensate a teacher based off their performance in the classroom of how they're able to train students, that would be such a sought after job. And you would be getting people creating like a level of competition where you're always raising the bar. And I think our whole education system could even start to elevate. But I wish that there was some aspect of a sales compensation model within the teaching world just to incentivize high performance. Because Miss Mead and other teachers out there, I feel like she just did it out of the goodness of her heart and just gave her all, which is such a cool motivation. But also there should be other factors to be rewarded for.
Exactly. I mean, I hit this stroke of luck when I went to high school. I really hated school until I got to high school. When I got to high school, I was a part of a school that had an incentive, like a financial incentive for the top teachers in whatever school to transfer to work there. And I didn't realize this until much later. And, I'm going to ask my principal. I need to ask him if that's true. I'm speculating based on, I have these conversations with people all the time where they're like, I don't remember anything that any of my teachers did. But I look back and I had this like we had a building full of like all-star teachers. Dang. And I remember ones that taught me, ones that did like, there was this basketball coach who also taught history. His name was Mr. Lee. Shout out to Mr. Lee. And I found out that he's a black guy from Houston, but I found out that he does Latin ballroom dancing.
And heck yeah.
Like there's this girl I wanted to impress who was in the Latin ballroom dancing. So I literally showed up to his door after school and I said the exact line. I said, Mr. Lee, I learned that you know Latin ballroom dancing. I need you to teach me everything you know. And he was like, hey, you want to start a club? We started this whole club called Latin Motion, right? I never had him for class, but like to this day, I know how to tango. I know bachata. I know merengue. Like I know all of that because I learned in high school, right? Like I can just go down the list, like whether it was wrestling coach, whether it was my world history teacher, like my high school speech coach, all these teachers that just happen to be in the same building. The more I work in education, I realize like that's not normal and it's not, it probably happened by design. So, it's fascinating. I mean, like we have to do a better job of giving teachers enough fuel to keep going because you have that in a lot of other professions. And then we have to do a better job of compensating them for what they're worth. Now the base pay is going up, right? Like in Houston, where I'm about to move from Dallas to Houston, but in Texas, base pay for a teacher is $63,000 to $65,000 a year.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that's way better than most of the country. If you're coaching, and leading a club, and if you have a master's degree, puts you on pace to start at around 70 something thousand. That's not horrible. It's not horrible. Not bad, especially in a place with no state income tax and a low cost of living, right? But it's not like that for the rest of the country. And even still, if I come in and I have a college degree, or come in and I have a master's degree and I'm making whatever, 68, whatever it is. If I'm the best teacher in the building, I should make more than everybody because I'm the best teacher in the building, So I totally think you're right with that incentive-based pay.
Man, well, it's cool to hear your thoughts and perspective on that, like being in the space and even some of those numbers or those metrics. That's actually a little bit higher than I thought. So that's cool that in Houston, it's like starting to change. And hopefully that will start to carry throughout the rest of the country because I think teaching, and I'm so drawn to teaching. That's literally one of the reasons why we started our company Sales Dojo. But I think teachers, and I think another word for teacher is coach, kind of like what we talked about earlier. But I think they have one of the most amazing opportunities to be able to impact and change lives. Yeah. And I think changing, inspiring, and helping people live better lives is one of the most noble professions and something people want to do. And it's also so valuable, especially when you're talking about educational systems like next generation. Imagine having our most impactful, inspiring thought leaders be able to come in and lead and inspire the next generation.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm curious your perspective on teaching as well. Like, what is the impact that you see a really great teacher can have on the life of their students?
I mean, I've heard people say this a lot, that one teacher can change an entire family. And I think that's true. Like, you know, I remember being in high school, I had this homeroom teacher who ended up being my speech coach. He ended up being my favorite teacher ever, right? And he's trying to recruit me to join the speech team. And I'm like, dude, speech is for nerds. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go play basketball because I'm going to go to the NBA. And he said, how tall is your dad? I was like, well, he's like 5'9". And he says, okay, at your height and like where you'll probably peak height wise, if you were going to the NBA, we would all already know it. So how about you join the speech team, you come here, and you can pursue your hoop dreams later. And there was something about the way that I just felt like he was being real. Like, you know, I thought about it and I was like, no, he's probably right. And I joined the speech team, and it is the thing that changed my life. Like, I would not have gone to college and I think very bad things about the university system in America, very bad things about it. But I would not have gone to college, and I would not have been able to go to college for free had it not been for that activity. I've never been on vacation. I don't go on vacation. Like I literally grew up in the hood. Vacation is a thing where like that doesn't happen. Like if you're going somewhere, you're going to work. But that activity allowed me to travel the world on someone else's dime, on Texas State University. Like, you know, I traveled the world. I gained an impeccable set of skills that I've been able to use every day of my life. I created lifelong friendships. Like we just had this like accidental reunion. A friend of mine who I'd known from speech for half of my life, his daughter's birthday, at her birthday party, which his daughter and I share the same birthday. So I was like going to my birthday twins, 2-year-old birthday party. And there's all of these speech people from our college years there. And we're kind of like looking around and we're like, guys, we're all crushing it. Like we're all doing really good in life.
That's cool.
And yeah. And the thread is we were all a part of this activity that was weird and that changed the way that we thought about the world and people and work, and gave us this golden tongue that people gravitate towards. So, you've got one, he's like a friend of mine, he's like an actor in commercials. And I'm like, dude, you happy doing that? He's like, exceptionally happy doing that. Like I live in LA part of the time, I'll like turn on Hulu and I'm like, there's Will on another commercial. Like, so that is an example of like how deep the impact. Like if Mr. Martin had not said that to me, I would have been chasing this hoop dream. I would have passed up on an opportunity of a lifetime that has led me to the school project that changed my world, that changed my whole perspective. It was like we were building schools, software companies, software acquisition firm, all in one. Their general interest, like their introduction to me, was someone saw my TED Talk, sent it to them. They were like, if you can get this guy to create a speech program at your school, then like everybody will want to come. So that's why like this software billionaire, that's why his team like came and found me. It was like, come be a part of this team. Right. So if it had not been for Mr. Martin keeping it real with me and recruiting me on the speech team, that would have never happened. And it changed my family's life. So I can talk about this all day, but I think the impact of a great teacher is truly generational, like truly generational.
Well, maybe you can even share your thoughts a little bit about, because you grew up in inner city life, single mom raised you.
Yep.
Maybe could you tell us a little bit about your family situation? And then I just want to hear like how you feel like you were able to kind of overcome some of those obstacles of maybe not been giving the same educational opportunities as other people. Still trying to make you out.
I mean, so like when I say education is my life's work, I mean, really, like I come from a line of educators. Like my mom is a teacher. My last name is Yates. Jack Yates built the first all-black school in the state of Texas. My My mother-in-law's in education, just like it's in a lot of ways, it's a family business. But yeah, like I grew up in this neighborhood called Fifth Ward in Houston. Fifth Ward, when I was growing up there, it was very dangerous, still is pretty dangerous. And our relief was moving to this neighborhood called A-Leaf. And A-Leaf.
Let's go.
Yeah. A-Leaf is, the nickname was the SWAT. Like, it is also very dangerous. Just less dangerous than Fifth Ward. So we lived there, but my educational reality was different because my mom taught in the district, and part of her strategy, the reason why she stayed or why she remained a teacher is because in the 90s, oh man, it makes me feel so old. In the 90s, when I was growing up in Houston ISD, if your parent taught or worked in the district in any level, bus driver, lunch lady, teacher, principal, whatever, you then could go to whatever school in the district you wanted, no matter where you lived. So my mom put us in all of the top ranked schools in the district. So there's this scene in the book, in the movie, The Hate U Give, where the main character, she's black, she lives in the hood, but she goes to this like very rich private school. That was like, it wasn't private, but that was what my life was like. Like I am a very emotional Houston Astros fan. There is no sports team on planet Earth, except for maybe the Rockets, that I love like I love the Houston Astros. Like I've been with that team my whole life. But part of the reason why is because where I went to school, I used to like, just to paint the picture how different it was, I used to see the Houston Astros like walking their dog or like in the grocery store. Like Jeff Bagwell was the first baseman. And when I literally legitimately in elementary school, I was like, I'm not sure he's a human being. I'm pretty sure he's an alien. Like, I was like, no one is stronger than Jeff Bagwell in the whole world. So it was like him and Chuck Norris. So it was like those two people. So when I saw Jeff Bagwell in person, we had this, Houston has a lot of hurricanes. So there was a hurricane, the whole school's flooded, and his niece or somebody like went to my elementary school. So he pulls up in a Hummer, like picking kids up. And I'm looking around at the rest of these kids and I'm like, do you see this? That's Jeff Bagwell. Like, I'm like, that's where I grew up. So like I grew up went to school in these neighborhoods that was like nothing like, but what it did for me was it wasn't necessarily that the teaching and learning experience was anything better. I have taught so I know that those teachers are probably just as well. I'll just say this. No, there is no such thing as great teacher training. I'm gonna get in trouble saying that. Teacher training is not great because it tries to standardize an experience, but I won't go down that rabbit trail. The most important thing that did for me though was it exposed me to a way of living that I never would have seen otherwise. The neighborhoods where I went to school, I remember we would drive around and like, cause we like during Halloween or Christmas, we would drive around and look at all the decorations. And I used to like look out the window and I'd say, one day I'm going to have a house like that. Like one day. And I had this surreal moment because I live in Dallas now. We're moving back to Houston and I'm driving around that neighborhood and I'm just like, you know what? I've never like Zillowed. I don't know how much these houses cost. And I was driving down the street. I was like, oh, I could buy that house and I could buy that house and I could buy that house. And for me, it was this, like, we didn't buy in that neighborhood because it floods all the time. But for me, it was this, that was just the most full circle moment for me. Where I was like almost in tears. I'm just like driving around this car, like, oh, have I made it? So that's the depth of the chasm between like where I grew up and where I went to school. And so for the way that it impacted my life as an educator is like, I know what the kids on the other side of the train track get. I know. I've lived it. I've built it. I've built a school for the wealthy elite. I've built multiple. So I know like that the disparities in opportunity and in resource are real. Right. So it impacts my work. It's why I choose to work at Teach for America. I had an axe to grind with TFA for a very long time. I applied to Teach for America and they rejected me. like actually kicked me out of my interview. Like, and then they came and offered me a job later in my life. Right. It's like I'm, but I choose to be at Teach for America because for all the reasons why the organization deserves real criticism, at the end of the day, I know that those people at TFA are trying to make sure that everybody gets not necessarily the same opportunity, but a higher quality of education than what they're currently getting.
Man, dude, that's a cool story. And seriously, such a powerful contrast to live in like that dangerous inner city environment that you were in, but then just be exposed. Like the exposure to what life could be was like an education in itself of like seeing possibilities of what's out there. In your TED Talk, I was listening to your TED Talk, you talk about this culture of power and how you try to create that in your classrooms. And I thought that was really cool. But you share a story about a young Latino kid and you had to help kind of teach and train him on what his identity was. Yeah. Helping him understand who he could be. When his mom in the story was telling him, no, you can't go to college. You're not good enough to do these things. Yep. But having someone else outside kind of instill that belief in him. What have you seen that like in the educational system as you're teaching, as you're designing curriculums, what role does identity and understanding your identity kind of play?
I think it's huge. Today the word identity, I mean, it's kind of crazy because like even when I did that TED Talk, the word identity did not hold all that it does today. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not talking about necessarily identity in terms of like, not even necessarily gender or race. Those are intertwined. I'm really talking about how you see yourself and where you see yourself. It's like the Stanford Life Design Lab, they call this life view. Like, how do you view life? And if I were to redo that TED Talk, that's what I would correct that. So I do think there are a lot of people that do lots of great identity work, but that's not what I'm getting at. Identity is the right term though. Like it's just changed over the years. What I'm getting at though is like in the United States, I think this becomes powerful when you start thinking about the way that you're wired and the way that you're built and the way that you grow up differently. Like you could say, oh, I'm from a poor, dangerous neighborhood. Therefore, I am disadvantaged in life. And in a lot of ways, that is true. However, you speak English in a country where speaking English happens to be, it actually happens to unlock opportunity for you. There are people who live in America that don't have a command over the English language, and it is difficult for them to navigate this country. So like it actually is an advantage to speak English. And if we stop thinking of it as a baseline thing that everybody gets and start thinking of it like, okay, cool, I'll take that coin. That's a chip in my favor. Do you have access to public education? Right? Like one of the things that students used to do in Houston, that I'm sure they do other places, they would go to a really competitive school for 3.5 years in high school. And then they would transfer to a school that is not doing very well because they knew that they could play the game and they would be in the top 5% or top 10% of that school, which means automatic acceptance into University of Texas, which is one of the more prestigious schools in the state. But it's brilliant. Like people were like, oh, that shouldn't be allowed. I'm like, no, that absolutely should be allowed. I have no problem with that. Like they played the game and they won. Don't be mad at the player, hate the game, right? I love seeing it. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, if we can convince students to view themselves as as agents of change, or as right now I'm saying designers of their own life, like if we can stop trying to make students view everything the same, like your path to success may not imagine if students thought they were awesome instead of thinking that they or they need to wait for a piece of paper to say that they're awesome. Or, like imagine how many, I mean, like your story is amazing where you're like, I tried going back to college multiple times and then it's just like, not for me. Like, and you carved out an amazing life for yourself, but you have this really sobering view of like, yo, you got to move differently. Like if you don't go to college, you have to move differently because you have a deep, profound sense of like who you are, how to view yourself, how you work. Right. And so I think if we can start giving that to students early, like if you know that you're an early riser, or if you want to become an early riser, like what advantage does that give you? If you live in California and you like to sleep in, you should not work in finance because by the time Wall Street's closing down, like you just getting up, like, so I think it's all of that self view. It's all that life view. It's like, where do I come from? Do I need to get out of here? When I get out of here, do I come back? What about me is powerful? What about me gives an advantage? I think it can be a game changer. And I've seen it be a game changer with the student from my TED Talk. I can now use his real name. His name is Craig, and Craig has had this incredible experience. And it really had nothing to do with me. It had something to do with the day that he decided like, nope, like this is my life. And like the things that I've been doing are not only valuable to me, but they're valuable to other people. So yeah, like, Craig is awesome. And I hope he hears this, I'll send this to him.
Well, dude, how cool is that? I mean, that word life view. Yeah. I'm using that forever.
Yeah. Steal it.
That is one of the coolest ways of putting it that I think I've ever heard, of just being able to ask someone, like, how do you view your life? How do you view yourself? Where do you even believe that you're capable of going?
Yep.
And I think even your experience of just seeing another world of what the possibilities were, it just allows you to dream. Yeah. It allows you to just open your vision of like, oh man, like there's so many possibilities out there, where I think a lot of people can kind of get sucked into this box of like feeling there's only one path, or they're very limited in what they can or can't do. And I think school, one of the things I've seen with school, it's hard, is like, if I want to go to college, I have to pick in that moment what I want to do for the rest of my life. Yep. And if you switch your major, then you have to restart, and you got to pay more money to take more classes to get this degree. And there's not a lot of room for exploration of these types of topics. And I think that was one of the things that was tough for me, because I was going to school and I had no idea what I wanted. After high school, I went on a 2-year church mission. So I lived in Australia for 2 years. Loved it. It really opened my mind to the world. But then I come back, I'm 20, starting college, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I guess I'm going to go do business because I hate watching surgery videos. I'm not going to be a doctor or anything there. So I'm like, okay, I'll do business. That's what my dad does. So all of a sudden I'm studying business management, and I'm like, what is this getting me? Like, where is it taking me? I didn't even know what type of job I was going to get with a business management degree. And there was just no opportunity for exploration. And it wasn't until my dad, he gave me options all of a sudden. He said, hey, Jerry, you should go work for one of these tech companies. I was like, Dad, I can't work for a tech company. I don't have a degree. I don't have any technical background or anything like that. He's like, well, go do something non-technical like sales. Yeah. And so that's how I ended up getting into a tech company. Was I took a chance, dropped out of school, started learning about sales, started doing technical sales. That's led to Dojo. That's led to everything else that we've been creating. But it all started with my dad giving me possibilities, or allowing me to dream and have options about what I wanted to do. I didn't feel stuck in this box anymore. And that's been a huge, huge pivotal moment for me. And so I guess one thing I want to hear your perspective on is, how can you help somebody, or what's your advice on somebody trying to figure out what they want to do with their career, what they want to study at school? Like, what's your perspective on being able to kind of come to those types of conclusions?
My perspective comes from something that this project that I was working on. But I think it's that you got to try a bunch of stuff. Like you have to have no fear about trying a lot of things. I realized the only reason why I can say college was a success for me is I trended on Twitter one time because of the amount of classes that I skipped. Like I was never in class. Anybody that knows me will tell you, like, they were like, Mike was never, they would see me. I used to have professors that, like, when I showed up on test day, they would reintroduce themselves to me. Oh, hi, how's it going? Since we haven't met before. But what I was doing was, and the reason why I got away with it is because I was so bored in class that I created my own set of experiences by going to try stuff. Like, I wanted to get into graphic design. I had a friend that was like, what you should do is, you should go redesign logos of businesses for free. So I was like, cool. Went to this small, I was in college in a small college town. They had this downtown square, and I went door to door and I said, hey, not like, can I design? I've redesigned all of your stuff. Here is a packet. You can have it for free. Just let me know if you use it. Text the number. To this day, there are still 3 businesses that use a logo and color scheme that I designed for them for free. Like, one of them, my wedding, like, she came to my wedding, like, gave us our first vacuum, but I look back on my life and, like, I've just had a lot of reps to try different things. Even when I was young, my mom had this incredible idea of exposure. So I went to engineering camp. I spent most of my summers at the Houston Zoo. I worked at the Houston Zoo from the time I was 13 until I was 19, but it was only because I went to camps from the time I was 5 until I was 13. Like, so I just had a bunch of reps at trying things. I'm afraid to try and fail. So I think it's that. It's so funny because you're in Utah, right? You're in Provo?
Yeah. Just in Salt Lake City.
So there are two guys that I talk to a lot about this thing. They're also both in Utah. Their story also starts with church mission. So they one of them behind Lambda School, which was very similar to Sales Dojo, but for like engineers. I think Lambda School probably would have been more successful if they were thinking about non-technical careers in tech. But we were working on this project together called Factor, where the idea was, if you can get students together to try a bunch of different projects so that they can rule things out faster than they're saying opting in, like, yeah, I want to do that, then you can really do something special. Because for me, I did this internship the summer between senior year of high school and college. And it was an engineering internship, quote unquote. I learned AutoCAD, and I learned my way around some software for week 1. And week 2, they handed me a work shirt, and they were like, all right, now you're going into the field. I was like 18 years old, jumping into manholes, busting up sidewalks, pouring asphalt. And, like, I had a blast that summer. Like, but at the end of the summer, I was like, I never want to do that ever again, because it's 110 degrees and it's humid. I will never do that. Like, I'm not cut out for that. So I think ruling things out as fast as you can, just jumping in. I've sold vacuums door to door. I sold Kirby vacuums door to door. Like, and to this day, I can say I've sold 6 $3,500 vacuums to people that were really excited about that vacuum. Never want to do it again. I don't want to do it again. I would do tech sales, not consumer goods, right? So I think the more you know about what you don't want to do, the easier it is to find your lane and to figure out, like, how you want to be in that lane.
Oh, dude, that's such good advice. And I think that's been one thing that both of my parents have pushed for me and for my sister growing up, is not being afraid to fail at different things that you're trying. That's my dad will tell me that all the time. And, like, that is something he wants me to learn from him, is don't be afraid to go try something.
That's right.
Fail at it or not like it, and then move forward. Yeah. He calls it pivoting. And pivoting, to me, has been a really crucial word, where pivoting means you're moving forward in some direction, and then you're learning more as you're going, and then you can make a different decision as you go down the road. But a lot of times, I think, myself included in this previously, is I was not willing to move unless I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And so I think of that inaction created a lot of anxiety and stress. In reality, it's like, dude, go pour concrete for a summer. Like, go do it. Like, worst case scenario, you made some money. And then you're like, I actually don't want to do that. Maybe I want to look at something else. Go design logos and try that out. I think what's so cool about your story is you have tried a lot of different things. And you just weren't afraid to go and do it and see what happens and learn from those experiences. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I love how your definition of pivot involves moving forward, because like, like in the startup ecosystem in tech, there's this idea that pivoting is moving backwards, that it's it's like there's this idea that like pivoting is somehow failure. Like you meet a founder and they're like, oh, we had to pivot, and everyone goes, oh no, what happened? It's like, no, like the market changed. So what? like now let's move on. I love that it involves moving forward. That's a good, I'm stealing your definition of pivot.
I appreciate that. Well, Mike, I gotta say, this has been one of the coolest podcasts that I've ever done. I could talk with you all day. I do got one question for you we can kind of wrap up with, but when we talk about owning your education and taking a proactive approach to educating ourselves, what advice would you give somebody that's trying to kind of, take better advantage of, owning what they want to learn moving forward?
Yeah. I think all the information is already out there, and a lot of it's free. Even though like there will become a point where you will come to a point where you need to invest time and money into the thing that you want to be great at. But if you're trying to own your own education, there's a lot of stuff out there. Do not be convinced that the person needs to have degrees for you to learn from. Don't be convinced that degrees mean anything, because they don't. So you can learn from anyone and everyone. The last thing I would say is like, I really push people to adopt a learner's mindset. And a lot of people say they have this, but they don't. The way to know if you have that is to know how curious, to really like be honest with yourself and don't lie to yourself, but check how curious you are about the world around you, which means go to your Google search history and see how many of those things that you've searched recently were like actual obstacles in your life, or if they were just random curiosities. Like, I will hear a word or see a thing or go outside and be like, wonder what that is. Lately I've been on this Google image searching kick where like you can take a picture with the Google app and it will search the image. If I don't know that, like I saw this thing on my roof, I was like, what is that for? So I took a picture of it, and now I not only know like how to repair it and how much it costs, but I know what it's for. Like, so like really take that curiosity seriously, because what it also might lead to is like, oh, what is that word in that job posting? Oh, I can actually do that. Or maybe I can do it, but I can learn how to do it. So if you become a really curious person, and then if you're committed to learning how to learn, you can do literally anything. Literally anything. Like, I'm sure I've been meaning to ask you this, and we should talk about this later, but I'm sure like with Sales Dojo, one of the things you probably have to do a lot of convincing people of is that they actually can do. They can hit the target. They can jump into the field. We limit ourselves by just believing that we can't do or learn. So yeah, I'd say learn. Don't get caught up in academia. Like I'll end with this quick story because I don't want anybody to be in this position, but I have this friend who I've known her for a very long time, and I'll leave her name out of this, but on the record, I think this is one of the greatest school builders in the world. Like I have tried to hire her multiple times. I think she's that good. And I had lunch with her recently, and she said, I don't know how to do anything. And I'm like, what? I could not believe that she saw herself that way. Like, I could not believe it. And that's where I was like, oh, this is so much deeper than I think about all the time. So I think if you adopt that curiosity, that learn how to learn, and if you just commit to viewing yourself as capable, then you can own your own education. You can be a super human. So,
dude, let's freaking go. That is some cool advice and perspective right there. Mike, I got nothing to add, dude, other than just thank you so much for taking this time. I love your perspective, your experiences, and we could talk all day, but thanks for taking this hour to hop on the podcast.
Man, thanks for sharing the space with me. I appreciate you. I know the work that it takes to put on a podcast, so thanks for the work you're doing to share the message with people.
Well, last thing, where can people connect with you? How can we best follow you, and where can we where can we follow that journey that you're on right now?
My LinkedIn. Yeah. If you just search Mike Yates on LinkedIn, I will tell you guys, I have never been worse at DMs on LinkedIn than now. I've taken several breaks from the platform because I'm preoccupied with TikTok right now. So I have 2 TikTok accounts. One of them is me, Mike Yates. The other one I have not shared publicly yet. But it is about my other hobby, and I will share it on LinkedIn soon.
Yeah, let's go, dude. We're excited to see that. So, all right. Anyone follow Mike on LinkedIn? Don't DM him. Maybe DM him.
No, you can't. It'll just take me a while. It'll be like a week or 2, and you'll be like, what is this guy doing? Not paying attention.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mike, give them on LinkedIn. Follow him on TikTok. Mike, I think what you're doing is awesome. I'm excited to keep seeing what you're doing.
Thank you, man.